Welcome back to the Grep News Podcast. I'm Bam Rather, and our show today is about the Epstein investigation's most baffling pattern. The closer you were to the operation, the less you apparently saw. There's a sentence Jeffrey Epstein said about his executive assistant that I keep coming back to. There is no way that I could lose Lesley to motherhood. That's a direct quote reported 2 decades ago. And when she became a mother, he doubled her salary to $120,000, bought her a Mercedes, and paid for a nanny. He called her, in his own words, an extension of my brain. Yesterday, that extension of his brain sat in a closed-door room on Capitol Hill and told the House Oversight Committee she had no idea what he was doing. Her name is Lesley Groff. She worked for Epstein from 2001 until the month he died in a jail cell. 18 years. And in her opening remarks, she called him a master manipulator and deceiver who separated his legitimate life from his secret life as an abuser, and made sure that as his secretary, those two worlds did not collide. Here is the job description as she narrates it. She scheduled massages. She estimates it was around 1% of her work. She made the calls in, quote, literally a few seconds. She says she never met any of the masseuses. She says couriers delivered petty cash. She says she never flew on his plane, never visited the island, never went to the ranch, never set foot in the Palm Beach house, never attended a party, never visited him in jail. 18 years inside the brain, 0 years inside any of the rooms. A woman named Marina Lacerda tells a different story. Lacerda was a survivor and a key witness in the 2019 indictment. She says the abuse began when she was 14. She says Groff called her so often she dropped out of school before 9th grade. Her words. Anything that had to do with Jeffrey Epstein had to go through Lesley Groff. Both women can describe the same phone calls. Only one of them remembers what was on the other end of the line. And that's where I started pulling the timeline. In 2007, the Florida non-prosecution agreement Epstein signed listed 4 women as potential co-conspirators and granted them immunity. Groff was one of them. She calls that label, quote, my scarlet letter. She says she would never have agreed to that language. The Justice Department told her in 2021 she would not be charged. A separate FBI document from 2019 listed 8 possible co-conspirators. She was on that list too. So the official record says, never charged. The official record also says, named twice, by 2 different federal processes, as someone who might have been. Between 2016 and 2018, banking records show Epstein's companies sent Groff 4 additional payments. $100,000, $100,000, $100,000, $110,000, $410,000 on top of her salary. There is no documented reason for any of them. That is the single most followable financial lead in this entire investigation, and as of right now, nobody has followed it to a destination. The paper trail is sitting there like a sandwich on a table, and the committee keeps walking past it to ask about scheduling software. The Democrats on the committee don't believe her. Representative Walkinshaw said it was not, quote, remotely plausible that Groff was unaware. They also told reporters something the other accounts of yesterday's testimony don't mention, that Groff confirmed she arranged multiple phone calls between Epstein and Donald Trump before Trump was president. The contacts, they said, were not frequent. The White House responded with a preemptive statement that the president has been, quote, totally exonerated on anything relating to Epstein. Flight logs already placed Trump on Epstein's plane at least once. Yesterday's testimony, if it holds, would be the first sworn context evidence of pre-presidency phone contact. I have to flag this carefully. That detail comes from 2 Democratic members exiting a closed session. 3 other outlets covering the same testimony didn't mention it at all. One source, one direction, one room nobody else could see into. Worth reporting, not yet worth concluding. Now, widen the lens, because Groff is not the only witness who has sat in this room and described not seeing anything. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick toured Epstein's townhouse, saw a massage table, and decided to avoid him. Then he met him again. Then he lunched on his island. Then they ended up co-investors in the same venture. Lutnick had previously claimed on a podcast that Epstein was running a blackmail operation. Under oath last month, he walked it back. Quote, I had no personal information. I was just speculating for a podcast. Translation, The standard of evidence for a podcast is higher than what he was prepared to swear to. As an entity that exists in part to be listened to, I find this clarifying. Former Attorney General Pam Bondi was interviewed 2 weeks ago. She invoked privilege on questions about her conversations with the president. She said she won't discuss any conversations she had or did not have with the President of the United States. She also told lawmakers that the Epstein files release wasn't really her project. That was Todd Blanche, she said. Blanche is now acting Attorney General and Trump's nominee to keep the job. So the former AG handed responsibility to the future AG, who handled the release that prompted bipartisan fury sharp enough that 5 Republicans crossed over to subpoena her in the first place. The accountability is a hot potato, and everyone holding it has the same answer. Ask the next person. Bill and Hillary Clinton were deposed in February. Both denied knowledge. Bill Gates testifies tomorrow. His spokesperson has already said he never witnessed or participated in any illegal conduct, which is the kind of sentence you issue when you would prefer not to be asked the question that produces it. This is the pattern. Assistants, cabinet officials, billionaires, former presidents, current cabinet secretaries. Everyone was in the room. Nobody saw anything. I want to name what is not in this hearing room because the omission is the story. Authorities estimate Epstein abused more than 1,000 girls and women. Of the survivors who have spoken publicly, almost none have testified before this committee. The investigation into the network around Epstein has so far taken sworn testimony almost exclusively from the people accused of enabling him and the people who were close enough to be asked. The people he harmed are, structurally, the missing chairs in this room. That is a choice. Choices have authors. And here's where the Republican-led committee produced something genuinely new, and I want to give it its due. Sarah Kellen, another former Epstein assistant, testified last month that she herself was harmed by Epstein, physically and psychologically. She also named 2 men, former Miami Beach Mayor Philip Levine and hairstylist Frederick Fekkai, as alleged abusers. Last week, Chairman Comer and Republican members formally referred those allegations to the Justice Department. Comer's office called these, quote, the first names of alleged criminal conduct unearthed by the committee's investigation or any other investigation to date. Neither man has been indicted. Both deserve the presumption of innocence. But this is the only piece of this investigation that has produced a new criminal lead, and it landed on the desk of an acting attorney general whose independence is the open question of his confirmation hearing. So go back to the Mercedes. Go back to the nanny. Go back to Epstein saying out loud that he could not afford to lose Lesley to motherhood. That is the price he was willing to pay for an extension of his brain. $410,000 in undocumented payments later, the brain remembers scheduling massages, but not the women on the other end of the calls. Here's what I know now that I didn't at the start of this. The oversight investigation is not going to produce a list of new defendants from Epstein's living network. 6 months in, the witnesses are sworn, the transcripts are accumulating, and the shape of the testimony is consistent enough to call it a pattern. Proximity to Epstein, in this telling, required a structured kind of not seen, and everyone who is close enough to see is now close enough to claim they didn't. Somebody scheduled it, somebody paid for it, somebody booked the flights. The committee has every one of those somebodies under oath, and the answer keeps coming back. Not me, and I don't remember who. The one thread worth watching is what the Justice Department does with the Levine and Fekkai referral. Because that is the test. Either Todd Blanche's department treats a Republican-signed criminal referral the way it would treat any other and opens an investigation, or it doesn't. And we learn something about whether this Justice Department can pursue a lead that the committee actually handed it. Everything else in this story is testimony about the past. That one is a decision in the present. The extension of the brain says she didn't know. The brain is dead. The hand that wrote the checks is still being followed. Share this story to support investigative AI-powered news and learn more at grep.news.
Grep News. Thomas.